Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the PG Show, where we talk about all things college football. But today, again, of course, as my team, the Oklahoma Sooners, are really trying to put it together on the recruiting trail, trying to finish strong, I want to go ahead and just recap some more thoughts about a lot of the rumors that are circulating and flowing around what could happen and who the Sooners could potentially land. But before we do that, please go ahead, hit that like and the subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below. And where do you think this Oklahoma Sooners class is going to finish as more things continue to come out about where the Sooners are potentially going to land? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and call it out there. I've said it this whole time. I think Oklahoma takes 30 commits in this class, and it's starting to look like the remaining 8 guys that Oklahoma would need to take to fill out the 30 spot. Oklahoma fans should be really excited for what the staff is going to be able to do and who they're potentially looking at. So, obviously, we've heard it all. David Hicks, Daymion, Sanford. I still think they're committing to Oklahoma just from what I've heard in my sources. So we don't really need to dive into that one too much. And I know Oklahoma fans are worried there. Just don't worry. Give it time. Listen, Hicks is a big-time recruit here and a big-time defensive lineman in terms of his talent and what we've seen previously at this position. So this might be a after a national, this might be a national signing day type of flip. So y'all are just going to have to wait. Be patient on this one. Peyton Bowen is interesting. There's been a lot of rumors circulating around him, potentially looking at coming down with that commitment this week. You heard Brandon Drum and Parker Thune talk about the in-home visits coming up, and BV potentially doing that here in 3 weeks after the state championship, going out there and celebrating with Peyton Bowen and the family. Listen, Denton Geyer is going to win the state championship out there in Texas, unless just something unforeseeable happens. They look like they have that pretty well locked up at the moment. I feel like Peyton Bowen's a lock with Oklahoma at this point. Again, just from what I heard from the people that I talked to, it really sounds like Oklahoma is solid there. It's Oklahoma's game to lose at this point. There are a couple names that Oklahoma has potentially looked at all recruiting season, that we're kind of questioning. The first one is Tausili Akana. So the question is, why hasn't this kid committed yet? Because this is a recruitment battle that Todd Bates and Brent Venables, or I think it might be just Brent Venables, has been in for a long time. He's a 6'4", 225-pound linebacker out of Lahi, Utah. His dad is still coaching in Hawaii, and there are some roots with the Hawaii thing in Oklahoma with Jocelyn Aulo, and you've got Dylan Gabriel. Then you have Jonah Laulu, who is he's Polynesian. He's not from Hawaii. So if you guys haven't seen that, go check out the Jonah Laulu interview I did. I'll link that here at the end of the video so that you guys can go and check that one out. But Tausili Akana is interesting because being a top 50 player in the 247 rankings, but a top 100 player ranked number 93 overall in the 247 composite, which is the compilation of all of the rankings together, right, on 3 Rivals, ESPN 247. You're potentially thinking this might be getting away from Oklahoma, especially with some of the other elite schools that have been trying to reach out and recruit Akana, whether that's LSU, Texas A&M, or Tennessee. And listen, Tennessee has been on a recruiting tear lately. I would expect for Akana to probably make a decision after the All-American Bowl. I would probably expect to see his decision come down from there. Now, one of the things that I know is freaking a lot of Sooner fans out here about Akana is Akana's taken a couple visits to Texas A&M. And Texas A&M has been a thorn in the Sooner side before. So he took a recent visit on June 6th, and then he took another visit on November 4th. Now, the one on November 4th was an official. On June 6th, it was an unofficial. He took an official visit to Oklahoma right before that on the 14th. So the question is, has Texas A&M gotten the last pitch on the official visit, right? is that the case? Because if that's the case, I'm personally starting to get a little worried, because he visited A&M back in 2021 twice. No, just once, because he was offered by Texas A&M right after. On June 5th, he took an unofficial visit to A&M and then got offered. The next day, he went and took an unofficial to LSU. So there's been obviously some potential interest with Akana and A&M there, and A&M has been a thorn in our side. They show Oklahoma a lot of trouble, especially on the defensive line, taking some of those guys away from us. If I had to give you an answer and you were putting a gun to my head today on, hey, does Akana commit to the University of Oklahoma? I'd say no. I just don't feel as confident as I did back in the earlier months about Akana. Just not hearing a lot of good things necessarily on the recruitment. Now, that could change. My sources could just be the wrong sources, but I do like to trust my people, right? When you talk to Drum also doesn't necessarily feel as confident. So here's my deal. I feel like we're going to know whether it's after the All-American or the Polynesian Bowl on where Tausili Akana stands. He's really athletic. He's a player that, could come in day one and make an impact. The thing is, though, if we lose Akana, we still have the 5-star PJ Adebore at that position. So, I don't think this is a cause havoc here, right? I think this is one that's okay to lose, especially with talking about some of the other recruits that Oklahoma's looking at on the defensive line. So, going into the next one, we're going to talk about Mica T's. So with the recent decommitment of Anthony Evans, you would expect Oklahoma to be able to go in on Mica T's really heavily. And we know that Jay Valai is going to be out at the in-home visit tomorrow, this Friday, with Mica T's. And here's my deal. Mica T's wanted to come to Oklahoma. He also wanted to play at wide receiver. So the stars are aligning for Mica T's after this in-home visit to say, I'm flipping my commitment to the University of Oklahoma. I don't think there's any more that I need to really say on that front, because I'm pretty confident Tease, out of Booker T, Washington, top 200 player, ranked 182 overall, is going to end up a Sooner. When you look at what Tease is going to be able to bring in terms of an athletic ability, right? He has really good size, and he has really good physical tools to be able to go play at the wide receiver position. Now, of course, Oklahoma would like to see him want to potentially play at a DB role, but I think at this point, you recruit him as a wide receiver. You let him go in there and compete, and then if he doesn't win a starting role at the wide receiver position, give him an opportunity to switch over to the defense to go play in that defensive backfield. Right? I think that's what you do. But when you look at what he is able to do, he's still got some athletic talent being a multi-sport athlete running track. You look at it, he ran an 11.5 100 as a junior in March of 2022. And he qualified for the Oklahoma 6A meet in the 100 meters as a sophomore. So when you look at what Mica T's is able to provide the Sooners in terms of speed, and his physical ability to go up there and grab the ball and play, whether it's in the defensive backfield or as a wide receiver, you would feel pretty confident that Mica T's could come in and help make an impact in that wide receiver room, especially with Theo Weiss transferring out, potentially Marvin Mims going pro. So that's an option for the Sooners, and I think it's an option that the Sooners are going to be able to land. Mica T's did take an official visit on September 16th to Texas A&M, and he has been committed to the University of Arkansas since July 4th. So we'll have to see where that one lands, but I still think it lands in the Oklahoma Sooners' favor. Now, there are two guys that we need to talk about that I think might surprise you. The first one is Etta, and I know a lot of people are starting to hear about him. Remember, he did take an unofficial visit to Bedlam. He is ranked 109th in the 247 composite. So remember, that's the blend of all of the recruiting sites. He's ranked 83 overall just in the 247 rankings. When you look at his recruitment, this is going to be a tough one for Oklahoma because right now he's committed to Michigan and his best friend is committed to Miami. And Parker would tell you that him and his friend, and I'm not going to try to say his friend's last name because I don't I would totally butcher it, that they were going to ultimately end up rooming together at Michigan. So with Miami coming into this recruitment as well, this is one that you would expect Oklahoma that they're going to have to really scrape and claw for. But this is the thing. You land David Hicks, and it changes the mindset of a lot of recruits on whether or not they want to come to Oklahoma. Because you land a guy like David Hicks, and it completely changes the narrative of what the Oklahoma defense is doing. They see the change. So right now, I'd put Etta at about a 6 in terms of Oklahoma, but I still think there's a lot of work that Bates and these guys are going to have to be able to do to be able to try to lean and pick him up. Now, you're hearing about Oklahoma picking up a lot of steam in this recruitment. And why is that? Well, one of the things that you look at when you look at Etta in terms of the recruiting trail and why he's a sought-after recruit, why a team like Alabama and Michigan and these places wanted him. He has an 81-inch wingspan, right? And he has an overall a pretty major physical build, a pretty strong physical build. And so when you look at him and the way that, when he gets to college, he gets in the Schmitty program, you see his body start to mature up a little bit, gain some weight. Listen, this is going to be a pretty big recruitment for the University of Oklahoma. You land a guy like this and you don't land David Hicks, I feel good about where the defensive line is still at. Another guy that you guys probably are not aware of, and if you pay attention to the recruiting, you might be aware of it, but I would expect a lot of you guys are not. This one's CJ Blocker, and he is a 6 foot, 165-pound cornerback out of New Caney, Texas, and this is an Oklahoma legacy guy. And I think regardless of where the Peyton Bowen situation ends up with Oklahoma or with Oklahoma, CJ Blocker, I think, is still pretty heavily leaning Oklahoma's way. Now, looking through his offer sheet, doesn't currently have an offer from Oklahoma, but it's one that I would expect to see Oklahoma throw out an offer for. And you start to see Jay Valai and Brandon Hall really start to pick up some traction here. He was offered by Alabama on November 26th. He took an unofficial there as well. He's officially visited TCU, and he's officially visited USC. So it's not going to be an easy recruitment. But being an Oklahoma legacy guy, especially if you're able to land Peyton Bowen, I think that's going to go a long way for CJ Blocker's recruitment. And ultimately, this is going to be a guy that maybe doesn't see the field right away, but I could ultimately see him being a CJ Colton in the background, right? It might take him a couple years, but I could ultimately see this guy making the kind of impact that CJ Colton has made the last 3 games in terms of an on-field performance. And at the cornerback position, especially going on next year after Woody Washington leaves, because yes, I do think Woody Washington is staying. Just all indications point that he's going to be able to do that, which is weird because that's a guy that you thought was going to go pro last year. That would be huge for Oklahoma. So the cornerback position is going to be interesting for the Sooners going into next year, especially with some of the high-end recruits that are out there that some of them I'm like, okay, I can see Oklahoma land, but at the same time, you see Oklahoma potentially struggling there in that category. This would be a big pickup for the Sooners, and it could potentially help with the future roster and understanding what Oklahoma could go get there. So I go in here, I look at what Oklahoma could land. All the guys we talked about, Keyshawn Blackstock, because yes, I still think Oklahoma goes out there and lands the JUCO offensive lineman who is a 4-star and is one of the more highly rated, I think one of the top 5 JUCO prospects out there. Listen, they've landed Kendall Dolby, and Kendall Dolby will eventually be ranked as well. I think it puts OU at about 30 commits, and you see them land, again, anywhere between the 304 to about, I'd say, 308 at this point. I still expect Jackson Arnold to pick up his 5-star commit plus, his 5-star plus or whatever they call it, because Rivals doesn't have him as a 5-star yet. But I would assume after Jackson Arnold wins the state championship, Rivals is going to have to give this man his 5-star, because Jackson Arnold is a 5-star across the board. Jackson Arnold is one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this class. Now, I say that, and not the top 3 quarterbacks like what 247 has him ranked, because I think Arch is a top 5 quarterback, but he's not the number 1 quarterback, and he's definitely not in the top 3. I think when you look at the top 3, you're thinking in no particular order: Jackson Arnold, Dante Moore, and Malachi Nelson. I really like what all 3 of those guys bring to the table in terms of the quarterback position. And for Oklahoma to be able to go land a quarterback like that outside of the Lincoln Riley era, especially the year after Lincoln Riley leaves, that's pretty big. And the thing is, I think you're going to see a lot of this for Oklahoma. You're going to see Oklahoma recruit a lot of 4-star quarterbacks that end up becoming 5 stars throughout their tenure and their recruitment. So that's something to potentially be looking out for the University of Oklahoma and what they do at the quarterback position. But again, I think Oklahoma lands at about 30 commits, probably ending about that 304 to 308 range for the Sooners. And they still have a lot of good transfer portal options as well. So, they take 30 commits in this class, but you probably don't see, I'd say you probably see 5 guys out of the 30 play next year any significant time, right? You'll see a lot of them probably sit, try to develop, build some weight. I think one of the guys that you could see immediately come out and get some really good playing time is one Caden Green. When you look at what he's able to bring, especially on the left side of the offensive line, Caden Green's pretty elite at 6'5", 315 pounds. And, he just recently lost the state championship in a 1-possession game. And I know Parker and Brandon talked about it. But, one of the things that when we look at what this recruiting class for Oklahoma is bringing is they're bringing the skill of being able to go out there and win games. And so I look at Caden Green and I see what he's able to bring to the Sooners on that offensive line after they're losing quite a few guys. He has a great ability to be able to go out there, change his feet. He's quick on them. He's great with his hands. He's quick. He's got really good flexibility. When you look at that as an offensive lineman, I think Caden Green could ultimately be a 5-star. I don't think he's going to get his 5th star, but I think he's one of those 4-star guys that is a 5-star. So keep an eye out on that. Caden Green definitely, I think, is going to be contending for a starting role in that offensive line. If Peyton Bowen and David Hicks are here, they're starters. Jackson Arnold, I actually don't think is a starter next year. He might get a chance later in the season, depending on how DG's playing. But ultimately, I think Dylan Gabriel's got that spot locked up. So you got David Hicks, Peyton Bowen, Caden Green. I think you got PJ Adebore. I don't think he's a starter, but I think he sees really good, significant minutes on the defensive line, especially at the edge role where, maybe we're kind of lacking in that position next year. I think you'll start to see him there. And then obviously Blackstock, I see him being able to start on that offensive line as well. So go ahead. Let me know what you guys are thinking down in the comments below about the 2023 class for the Oklahoma Sooners. Where do you guys think we're going to land? Currently, we are at number 7. If we land everybody that I think we're going to be able to land, and everybody stays at where they're at now, right? So that means nobody moves up or down in the 247 rankings and the composite rankings. I think Oklahoma probably lands, if you look at it right now, it would be number 2. But I think they definitely land in that 2 to 4 range. So something exciting for Oklahoma Sooners fans. It'll definitely be the best class ever in Oklahoma history. And that'll be in Brent Venables' first year after a 6-6 season. So, yeah, it's going to be pretty good for the Sooners. So go ahead, if you haven't already, please hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you guys have made it this far and you guys are looking for another really good couple videos to go watch the Jonah Laulu interview. Please, please, please. It helps me out a lot. And then also go hit the Reggie Grimes video. Tomorrow, we have the CJ Colden interview going live. So I really want to be able to get these interviews really going in terms of views, because that is what's going to be able to help me continue to bring you guys these OU interviews, but also the recruit interviews that I do, and then also interviews for guys that are at their schools as well. So really need you guys to be able to go hit those interviews and get those views and likes up.